Welcome back, this is StudMuffin1986, and today I'm going to be doing a guide on how to play with the Tier 10 German super heavy tank, the Maus. Now, this is currently the biggest tank in World of Tanks Blitz, weighing almost 190 tons. This is definitely a tank you do not want to get rammed by. Currently has the most armor, 360 degrees around the entire thing, more so than any other tank in Blitz, and can be one of the more feared tanks among newer players, but more experienced players might view this tank as an opportunity. And the reason why is because if you don't know how to play with this thing, all you're viewed as is just a giant punching bag on the battlefield. But if you do know how to play with it, you can be one of the most hardest penetrating tanks in the game, and also a very lethal weapon. So let's just go in and figure out just how to play with this. So in the upper left hand corner, you'll be able to see that this thing is categorized as a heavy tank. And the purpose of a heavy tank is to be on the front lines, in the trenches, angling your armor and applying pressure. Let's go in and look at one of this tank's greatest strengths. You can see here, just from looking at this thing from an angled position with another Tier 10 cannon shooting standard AP shells at this thing is practically a wall. Now, if you don't have this thing angled quite correctly and you're too flat, you can see this is where you just turn into one giant punching bag. And then from looking at the tank head on, you can see the cheeks from both sides of the cannon are weak points, and even that lower plate too. So being too flat and not angled against the enemy, you can see how it would be a problem with the Maus. You have very, very big weak points. But if you are angled correctly, you can see that your armor is so much more effective. And so now we're going to look at the Maus armor under APCR shells with the IS-7, and you can see that its penetration becomes a little easier if you're not quite as angled, but you still have a ton of protection with this thing if angled correctly, which is really nice. So now we'll look at another tank, the E100, using heat, and you can see even with yourself angled, heat rounds have a much greater amount of penetration, and you can still see that you still have a decent amount of penetration even from a heat round, which from a Tier 10 can have up to 400 plus, almost up to 500 plus, even with some tank destroyers with penetration. So heat rounds are going to be one of your weaknesses and is going to make it much easier for enemies to penetrate you, but you can still see when angled, and if you're shifting yourself back and forth, that you can still protect yourself from something as great as a heat round with that much penetration. So now I'm just going to pivot my turret and my hull, and you can see when angled correctly, your enemies still don't have a clear shot on you. So now from the bird's eye view, you can see this is how I have this tank angled against enemies. My turret just slightly pivoted off to the side, my hull. This is how you want to be positioned and angled, like so, when you're facing enemies that are taking shots at you. Now, one of the weaknesses of the Maus is when you come across a tank destroyer, such as a Jagdpanzer E100 using heat rounds, you can just see that you don't have a whole lot of protection, and your chances of getting penetrated are very high. But there aren't that many tanks in the game that have that good of penetration, but you can see you never want to be putting yourself in a very close-up bad position against a Jagdpanzer E100, for example, because you're just simply not going to have as good of protection. Now, one thing that this armor inspector doesn't show, but it is also very important to know with tanks of heavy armor and tanks that you're relying on the armor, is that distance also plays a factor in penetration. The further away you are, the stronger your armor is going to seem to be, just because of physics and how it works with the amount of distance a shell has to travel. It loses velocity and the penetration decreases. Now the armor inspector doesn't necessarily show that, but being able to also keep distance is somewhat of a factor. I'm not saying necessarily snipe, you still want to be applying pressure on the enemies, but distance can play a factor in helping you protect the mouse and make it seem like your armor is much, much stronger when a little bit further away. So now here I'm going to show you a little bit of side scraping. You can see the armor from the side, obviously strong enough to bounce around when angled, which is really nice. When you're backing up, going to take a shot, moving forward up against that building or that obstacle to protect the front of you, you can see that your side's very strong. However, you can see when you turn your turret towards the enemy, you have the sides of your cheeks, which are very vulnerable to get penetrated. What you want to do is when backing out, still keeping yourself side scrape, is keep your turret swaying just a little bit back and forth and angled, hoping that if they were to take a shot, it bounces off you, and then you can swing your turret in, pointing directly at them while they're reloading, and then taking a shot right at them. So going into the specs here, this thing has an amazing amount of protection, I had already said earlier, with an amazing amount of hit points of 2,500, which is the most of any tank currently in Blitz. You can just see from the armor, it has an incredible amount of armor, almost 200 plus around the entire thing with just 185 millimeters on the side. Almost 190 tons, which makes this thing very, very deadly for ramming. And just in one of the more recent updates, they did increase the speed, which is really nice too. Looking at the gun, 575 alpha damage, 307 millimeters of penetration is a little weak. That's why I do require you carry APCR rounds, at least 8 or 10. And then your rate of fire is not bad, but you can see that your aim time and accuracy is really good for those quick turning turret maneuvers. And then highly recommend getting the multi-purpose restoration. I would get the gears and also the medical kit. And then for provisions, I don't use them just because they are just so expensive, and you will eat up a lot of credits using those. And then for ammunition, 35 standard AP rounds, at least 8 APCR, and then 2 high explosive shells. And then for my equipment, I'm getting the large caliber gun rammer, the vents, and then the stabilizer for when you're shifting your turret around quite a bit, wanting those quick, accurate shots. So let's go into some gameplay here just to show you what I mean by now incorporating all of this stuff that I just gone over on how to play with this tank. So trying to get my whole team to go to the mill. We're now going to head up there, being this is a very good area for heavy tanks. See that being that they did have more mediums, they decided to come up behind on our flank. We do have the higher ground when coming up this way, which does give us a little bit more of the advantage. So I'm going to see the IS-7 here. Now, being that I am a little bit far away, I'm a little bit too far away here. My armor is going to be incredibly strong. I don't think that IS-7 is going to have much of a chance penetrating me, but I'm being careful here because I don't want to cut center and have all of them just swing and completely swarm our right. My right now, which would really put me in a bad position to be directly in the center. So it looks like we're doing pretty good. We're holding them off. I'm just going to go ahead and move in, continue applying pressure, and just taking shots here. These guys really aren't paying that much attention, very out in the open, not even utilizing their armor. You can see right there, I think he used a heat round, and I was able to, alright, actually I think that was a high explosive. I don't know why he was using a high explosive on a mouse, which that would have been very stupid. But you can see just even right there, enemy takes a shot. Luckily I had myself angled enough that I was able to bounce it. So I'm never really quite keeping myself still, even though I might think I'm safe. Because There could be undetected enemies aiming at me, taking shots, so I'm never really quite staying still. I'm always shifting, moving back and forth, and trying to keep myself as angled as possible when approaching the enemy, so they don't have a complete clear shot on me. So I'm just going full in, applying pressure, no need to stay in the back. Go ahead and move up here on this IS-7, not even really paying attention to me. Trying to save on credits here since I've got an easy shot and not going to use my APCR rounds. And then just close in on this ST here to finish off the game. So just one example. Wasn't really able to get in a super close quarter combat game to show you the effectiveness of this armor. But yeah, good game by our team, good game overall. You can see I did a decent amount of alpha damage, 3,144, which is really good. And I came out ranking as one of the top fighters on our team, which is nice. So now we're going to go into another game here, Mines. This is all about hill. And I can see that we have more mediums by... yeah, just by a little, which is really, really nice. So I'm going to actually just swing a little wide here, being it looks like our team's doing a very good job in being aggressive. I'm going to just go ahead and just keep pushing up here, coming along the side. Just because we have our fighters up there, I'm going to see if I can get some clear shots up on this hill to help them out if they need help. Looks like we lost one of our guys, and which is definitely unfortunate, but now it looks like our team is just completely conquering the hill. So it doesn't look like I needed they needed my help too much up there. But keeping myself angled, I do see I have a tank destroyer here. He's going to have the highest level of penetration. There I am, just once again keeping myself angled as much as possible, bouncing rounds. This guy completely has himself in a really bad spot. And if he would have just been a second late getting behind that rock, I would have just gotten a really nice shot on him. Disappeared, just, you know, I'm keeping my cannon pointed at him because if he pops out first, I can easily get a shot right into him like that before he has the chance to aim. Immediately turning my turret away from him and keeping myself angled, so if he did take a shot at me, I'm still protected from that. Now, I was a little vulnerable there, but being that we're so far ahead in this game, 4-2, I'm really not that worried, and I can tell that that guy, even from taking shots at me, wasn't using heat rounds, so his penetration was already going to be really low, and you can tell when someone's using which type of shell just by the sound of what it sounds like on impact when it hits you. And so high explosives are obviously going to have that real explosive sound to them. AP shells are either going to have, it's just going to sound like either a standard hit or just, you know, a bounce, and then a heat round is going to sound much more deep, but it'll also have a little bit of that high explosive sound. So keeping myself very situationally aware. Got a really good lucky shot on the E5 as he was trying to get on that rock, but you can see just by taking those quick shots, even with moving my turret, didn't even have to stay still very long to get that quick clutch shot, which is one of the advantages of the mouse, is just the accuracy of its cannon, which is extremely helpful. So just wrapping up the game here, looks like our OBJ is going to go ahead and finish up the last one, which he did, and another good game. So I hope this guide was helpful in showing you just a little bit more on how to use this tank. This is StudMuffin 1986. Let me know if there's any other tank reviews you want me to do it on, and take care.